Well, hi everyone, Corey Barker here, and as promised, I have got the tutorial here. If you saw over on my Facebook earlier today, I had put up a little composite image that I'd done with an image I shot on my phone on the way in this morning. It was rainy and overcast, and I took this image here with my phone. Yes, I took it while I was driving. I don't recommend that course of action, but I just wanted to get a quick shot to be able to use for this. Wanted to be able to put, composite some elements in here just to kind of make it look like an interesting chase scene. And I thought, why not use some Star Wars vehicles from PixelSquid? Now, PixelSquid is came along around toward the end of last year, and they are a new service that provides 3D models, but they do it in a very different way than you would normally think about 3D models, and it's a very interesting tool, and I highly recommend you to check that out. And we're going to play with a few of those right in here. They have a really cool plug-in. It's really kind of a Photoshop panel that you can actually install and access your PixelSquid library from within Photoshop and then apply them to your composites. So let's begin by, first, I'm going to create a new document. This is actually the raw image out of the camera, or out of the phone, and I don't want to do it in this format. I actually want to do it in a more widescreen format. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new document, and I'm just going to make it 2,000 by 1,000 pixels. And we'll just do 100 pixels. Oh. Let's do 1,000 pixels, not 100 pixels. There we go. So now I'm going to go ahead and grab this image and just drag and drop it on in here. And let's go ahead and minimize that. And I'm going to press Command T and then Command 0. And that's going to expand the document so I can see my transform box here. And again, I'm just going to hold down Shift Option and we'll drag this down and position this so it's in there. I want to see a little bit of the car so it looks, we can definitely tell that we're seeing this from the inside of a vehicle there. So we'll put that right about there. It looks pretty good. Okay. So now I've got my image in place. Everything looks pretty good. Now we're ready to go ahead and start adding the vehicles in here. Now I've gone ahead and added pretty much all the Star Wars vehicles into my little library here. And actually I'm going to go under the window menu. When you install the PixelSquid plugin, it'll actually be located under the window menu into extensions, and then just go right here to PixelSquid. Now it's going to open up the panel, and here is a collection of models that I've gone ahead and loaded from the website. Again, if you go to pixelsquid.com, you can set up a free account. And actually these models are free for the time being. That will change in the future, but for now you can go and actually add these to your library for free, and I'll be able to use them in your various Photoshop designs. So you can see I've got an interesting collection of various items in here I've taken from the site. Obviously a lot of Star Wars vehicles and props and such like that. So a lot of interesting stuff you can have a lot of fun with. So we are going to start here. We are going to put an X-Wing fighter into our layout here. So let's go ahead and grab, I'm actually going to grab this one right here. So I'm just going to double click on it. And what it's going to do is put it into my composition, as you can see right here. And you've got the PixelSquid panel right here. Now, what you can do is inside this window, if I click and just drag this model around, you can change the different positioning of this particular model. When I release my mouse, it's going to go ahead and update that in the main window, as you can see right there. And it generates a shadow and everything like that, and it's got all the lighting and everything in place, so that works pretty good. Now, the angle I want to get here is kind of an upward angle. Something like that, I think, works pretty well, what we're going with here. And I'm also going to go in here and just press Command T and free transform this and scale it up quite a bit. And let's just kind of maneuver this so it's kind of at a dramatic angle, like it's in flight. Well, what my idea here was to make it look like it's like flying right past my car, and almost kind of like this. Right down here, this part of the wing will be like scraping the ground or scraping the street there a little bit. And let's just kind of position that right there. And I'll go ahead and press enter and scale it. So you'll notice it's kind of fuzzy. It's very low res, and that's because we're in low res mode right here. But once you have it in place and where you like it, for now I'm going to go ahead and leave it like that. And you can go over here and click on the high res button. And what that's going to do is go ahead and just basically download the high res version and update your model in the window here, and you'll see it's going to get much clearer in just a moment. So there you can see it's a much cleaner model once you have it in place and looking the way you like it. So I think that looks pretty good. So there's my X-Wing fighter in place. Now another option is, of course, you can go over here and download the PSD, which will give you all the various elements and the shadow all on separate layers. So if you didn't want to have those elements, you could easily download the PSD. But in this case, for this particular model, I think that we're looking pretty good just like this. So I'm actually going to change that angle just slightly. Again, I'm going to press Command 0 and position this really dramatic angle like that. There we go. So now what I want to do is add another vehicle inside of this setting. Notice that this PixelSquid object is a smart object. And until we rasterize it, it'll stay a smart object, so you can edit it pretty much whatever you want to do with it. But I'm going to go over here to the top of my little PixelSquid panel and just click Add New. And we're going to go down here and add a TIE Fighter. So we'll go ahead and just double click on that, and that's going to drop it into the scene. Oh, there we go. So now I'm going to change the angle of this one. And you'll see it updates in there. Actually, we've got two in there for some reason. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to scale this one down and change the angle here. We need to make it look like this one's way off in the distance, like it's headed straight for this particular X-Wing fighter here. In fact, I can position it where this gun's kind of pointing right at that guy right there. And that looks like it works pretty good. Let's tilt that. I think I'm going to like it right there. There we go. Now, we do see a little bit of the shadow on the ground plane for this TIE Fighter. So I am going to go ahead and, since it's just a little sliver of it, I'm going to go ahead and download the high res. And just going to zoom in here. Now, I could go down, download the PSD and just get rid of the layer that way. I'm just going to go ahead and do it this way. Since this is a smaller element and it's further back in the background, I am just going to go over here and rasterize the layer. So I'm just going to right click on it and choose rasterize layer. And then I'm just going to take the eraser tool, very small eraser tool here, and let's just erase that line of the shadow so it looks more like this is in midair rather than sitting on some kind of surface. There we go. Okay. So now we've got our elements in place. Now, one of the first things I'm going to do here is on that TIE Fighter, we're going to lighten it. We want to have some atmospheric perspective on this. So let's just lighten this using some levels. And I'm just going to use the output levels and push this in a little bit. Notice how it gets lighter and lighter. So it looks like it's a further back in space in that kind of overcast sky area. So it looks like it's a little bit further back. So it's got some distance on it there. It looks pretty good. Now, I'm going to give it a little hint of speed by putting a little bit of a motion blur on it. So we're going to go to the filter menu and we're going to go to blur and choose radial blur. And inside here, we're going to set this to zoom. Now, again, I still wish this filter had a live preview, but unfortunately, we're still stuck with this little grid pattern here. But what you got to do is position the center of this wherever you want kind of the vanishing point of the blur to be. So if I want this to look like it's coming straight at the X-Wing fighter, I'm going to need to position the center of the blur way beyond the edge of that, something like that, I think. And there, that gives me a little bit of a motion on that. Now I can fade that by immediately going under the edit menu and choosing fade radial blur. And then we can just, basically this is undo on a slider. So I'm just going to go ahead and just bring this down to about 50% so it lessens that effect. And that gives us a subtle sense of motion on the TIE Fighter there. Now, on the X-Wing fighter here, let's go ahead and start playing around with some effects here. Now, one of the first things I want to do is add a little bit of motion blur to this. So I'm actually going to do a duplicate layer on this one, and let's go ahead and rasterize the duplicate layer. And again, we're going to do that same blur, but I'm going to do we'll do a radial blur. I'm going to reposition that center mark there just a little bit. And I'm actually going to increase it to about 5 this time. You don't want to get too crazy with the settings on this. Now you can see right away that doesn't really work. Look right, so we're going to need to do that again. And again, this is why I do not like that this doesn't have a live preview. We've got to deal with this like this. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to put a layer mask on that layer, and let's just go ahead and just kind of remove some of the blur on certain parts. You know, I want to have some sense of motion, but just kind of don't want to have it kind of blurring the whole thing. So let's just kind of do it like that. It looks pretty good. And then, of course, we need to add a little bit of a blur to the overall background. So back on that original background layer, I'm going to make a duplicate of that and run the same motion blur we just did on the X-Wing on that background. And I'm also going to put a layer mask on that layer. And let's go ahead and just mask this out. The center area here, we still got that little motion blur going on there. It looks pretty good. Okay. So now, like I said, I wanted to have this part of the wing actually look like it's kind of hitting the street, like he flew way too low to the ground, and he just actually scraped the street there a little bit as he was hitting it there. So we're going to need a few other elements to be able to do that. Now the first thing is I want to add some sparks. So I actually have an image of sparks that I'm going to use here. There it is. Okay. So I have this. This is actually an accidental shot at a fireworks display. It actually just, the camera went off in the middle of it, but it actually captured some pretty interesting spark elements, so that's what we're going to use here. So I'm going to go ahead and just command click on the red channel to load that brightness of that channel as an active selection. And I'm just going to go ahead and create a new blank layer. Or actually, no, let's go ahead and copy up what we originally got here. So I'm just going to press Command J, and we're going to copy those elements to a new layer, as you can see right there. Now, it did pick up some of that residual black background. So you're just going to go under the layer menu and go down here and choose matting and choose remove black matte. And that's going to take care of all that residual area. All right. So now let's go and drag in the spark elements over to our image here. Let's position it right about there. We'll go ahead and use warp and just kind of stretch these out so it looks like they're kind of dragging, or it's generating these sparks as it's kind of dragging along the street here. There we go. And you can just have a lot of fun just distorting and doing all kinds of cool things here. So that looks pretty good there. So I'm going to go ahead and get a layer mask put on that layer, and let's just go ahead and just kind of clean up some of the edging. Let's get a very kind of like a scatter brush here. There we go. There we go. So let's kind of clean up those edges there. Let's actually position this layer above that layer there. There we go. So now that looks more like sparks are being kind of flown all over the place there. And then, actually I'm going to go and get another brush I have. I've got a number of different smoke elements that I have, and one of them I've got here actually will work perfectly for this. Let me locate it among my vast library here. There it is right there. So this kind of smoke element, and let's go ahead and put it on a new layer here. So let's go ahead and, there we go. So go ahead and set it with white, and let's position that right where this piece is pretty much making contact with the street there. There we go. And we could also, I'm going to have to rasterize the layer to do this, but I'm going to go ahead and rasterize that main smart object layer there. And let's go ahead and select a part of this. Let's just assume it's hit the street and just kind of broke off there. So I'm going to select that area there with my lasso tool. And then press Shift Command J, and that's going to copy that to its own layer. And if I can see, I can move that around independently. So now if I just kind of move that and scale it, can make it look like it kind of broke off and it's just kind of falling apart there. There we go. Something I didn't do in my original one. I just kind of thought of that. It's kind of cool. So that looks good. Now, one more thing I'm going to do this is add a little bit of a particle effect here. And I'm going to use my particle brush that I've created once before. Let me locate it here. There it is. So it's got this cool particle brush that I created, and if you can see, if I just dab a few times, that's what it is. It's just simple debris. But I'm going to make that brush a lot smaller. And let's go ahead and change the brush behavior a little bit here. Let's bring up my brush options. And let's go ahead and just increase the spacing a little bit and randomize the size and the angle. And then I'm going to go into color dynamics here, and let's make sure the foreground and background jitter are at 100%. That way I get kind of a variation of color there. There you can see right there. And I'm going to go ahead and add transfer as well. And let's just go ahead and put the opacity jitter somewhere between 50 and 100, around 75 or something like that. So now I'm going to go on a new layer. Let's do this on a new blank layer. And then I'm just going to go dab some particle elements that are kind of flying off of this. Just like that. Just to give it a little bit more damage, almost like battle damage. Adding quite a few elements here. That smoke element is probably a bit much, so we'll just kind of put that right there. And this little element that I've got here, I'm going to run that same blur I did a while ago, just to give that a little sense of motion. And let's go ahead and fade that back a little bit. There we go. All right. Getting a lot of damage to the wing there, so that either suggests he's that bad of a pilot, or let's put that under the wing there. There we go. That he's that bad of a pilot, or he's just having a tough time fighting this TIE fighter. But we got to add some fire in here. I mean, it can't just look like he's just doing this for no reason at all, huh? So, actually, no, we got to add one more thing to the street here. And actually, what I want to add is a kind of, looks like it's, we obviously have it look like it's hit the street here and it's kind of tearing up this wing, but we need some damage on the street itself. So let's go and get, and I actually found this just random. I thought this would work well, and it actually did, was the wake of this boat in this image actually will work pretty well. And this goes to back to what I've always talked about looking parts of an image in a rather different way. So if we just take this more as an abstract element here, and let's remove the color there. Let's go ahead and bring it on over. And then we'll scale it on down. Flip it horizontally, and let's position that right there. And then I'm going to go to distort, and let's give it a little bit more perspective to make it look like it's really digging into the street there, really kind of tearing things up. We'll try a different blend mode, and don't forget to try and inverting it too. And see, I can do like a Command I, and that will give me a different look on it altogether. But I think I like the way it looks that way. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and get a brush here, and let's just brush away some of these hard edges here. And now we've got it looking like it's really tearing into the street there. And I'm just going to go in here and double click on that layer and just use the blend if, and let's go ahead and just lighten, or actually lighten up the darker areas there. There we go. So it looks like it's a little bit more blending into the street there. So that looks pretty good. Okay, so now let's add the laser fire. Now I was corrected on Facebook. Apparently a super fan pointed out that TIE fighters actually fire green lasers. So in an effort to appease that, I will go ahead and make the laser green. So let's get a simple round brush here, painting with solid white, just to make sure the brush is working right. And then we're going to go ahead and get a bright green color. Let's do this one here. Is that one? Okay. I was going to paint a streak like that. And I'm just going to put it in free transform, and let's go ahead and just position it at an angle so it looks like it's being fired from the TIE fighter. But we're going to do a little perspective to this. And that's going to make it look like it's coming from the TIE fighter at a distance there. So that looks pretty good. And let's modify the angle just a little bit. So I want it to look like it's actually kind of missing this TIE fighter, or this X-Wing fighter, just barely. And we'll position it right about there. Now what I want to do is make another one. I'm going to press Command J and make a duplicate. I'm going to press Command T to put this in free transform. Now here's a cool trick. I want to keep it in line with this one and look like it's coming from the TIE fighter. So I'm actually going to take the center point here and position it right where I would expect it to emerge from the TIE fighter itself. And then you just simply hold the Shift key down and scale it down. Oop. Actually, it's Option. Hold down Shift Option, and that will scale to that center point. And we'll do it in a form of perspective so it looks like it's coming from that element. Nope, let's do that again. So again, Command T, position the center point on the TIE fighter, and then you Shift Option, scale it right about there, and that looks pretty good. Now, I'm going to go back to that original laser beam, and let's just add a layer mask on that, and just put a quick little fade on that, like that. There, it looks pretty good. Now, one last thing. I'm going to make a selection based on the shape of the X-Wing fighter here. Just Command-click on the layer there, and I'm going to make a new layer above that layer. Really above, anywhere above the X-Wing layer is fine. And then we're going to take that same green color, and we're just going to brush a little bit of edge lighting on the ship there. So it looks like it's picking up the light from the laser. Let's actually put this in overlay mode. There we go. So it looks like it's picking up the light from that beam as it's passing by the fighter right there. Maybe drop the opacity there a little bit. There we go. And there we pretty much have it. So, I mean, again, like I said, this was one of those 30-minute composite challenges I put on myself where I just said, all right, well, let's just see what we can do in a short amount of time. So you can see with these PixelSquid models, you can actually incorporate them into your existing photos and do some really interesting stuff with them. And again, this was a simple iPhone shot. Just driving in this morning, just took a quick shot and was able to take it and make something pretty interesting out of it. So again, when you're taking pictures with your phone, think about something like this and being able to do something really cool with it, because now phones take images really, really well, and they can actually, instead of just using them as reference images, you can actually use them in your composite work.